The silence was what struck them first, not the roar of engines or the crack of gunfire that usually filled their headsets during extractions, but an eerie calm that made every SEAL on the ground check their weapons twice. Team leader Marcus Ghost Rodriguez pressed his earpiece, static crackling through the comm channel like broken glass. "Control, this is Razor One Actual. We have multiple hostiles converging on our position. Where the hell is our air support?" The response came not in the authoritative bark they expected, but in a voice that made several team members exchange glances. Smooth, measured with the kind of precision that cut through chaos like a scalpel. "Razor One Actual, this is Viper 77. I have eyes on your position. Maintain current cover and prepare for danger close." Rodriguez's jaw tightened. The call sign was unfamiliar, the voice distinctly female, and in his 12 years of special operations, he'd never had a woman direct close air support during a hot extraction. His team was pinned down in a Syrian compound, 3 kilometers from the Lebanese border, with enemy reinforcements closing fast. This was not the time for the Navy to send in someone unproven. "Viper 77, state your aircraft type and weapons package," he radioed back, trying to keep the skepticism from bleeding through his professional tone. "Razor One Actual, I'm flying an FA-18F Super Hornet with a full complement of JDAMs and 20mm. I've been watching your heat signatures for the past 6 minutes. Your extraction window is closing in approximately 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Above them, invisible against the pre-dawn sky, Dr. Amara Viper Akafer adjusted her grip on the stick of her $50 million fighter jet. At 34, she was worth more than most small countries' defense budgets, her tech empire having revolutionized military communications systems. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the mathematics of violence, the precise calculations that would keep 8 Navy SEALs breathing long enough to reach their extraction point. She'd volunteered for this mission against every advisor's recommendation, trading her corporate boardroom for a cockpit that most people assumed she'd never earned the right to occupy. The skepticism in Rodriguez's voice was nothing new. She'd heard it in pilot training in her reserve squadron, and now, when lives hung in the balance. Rodriguez watched the compound's eastern wall through his night vision, counting muzzle flashes. "Viper 77, we immediate immediate fire support on grid 38 SMD 12847. Hostiles are advancing from multiple vectors." The response was immediate, clinical. "Razor One Actual confirmed, rolling in hot. Keep your heads down, gentlemen. This is about to get loud." What the SEALs didn't know was that Amara Akafer had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Born in Detroit to Nigerian immigrant parents, Amara learned early that excellence was not a choice but a requirement. Her father, a mechanical engineer who cleaned office buildings at night to support his family, would trace aircraft blueprints on their kitchen table, explaining lift and thrust and drag to his daughter while she did homework. Her mother, a nurse who worked double shifts, saved every penny for flight lessons at a tiny airfield outside the city. By 16, Amara was flying solo. By 22, she'd graduated summa cum laude from MIT with dual degrees in aeronautical engineering and computer science. By 25, she'd developed encryption software that the Pentagon classified immediately after purchase. By 30, her company, Akafer Technologies, held contracts worth $3.7 billion. But success came with isolation. Board meetings where she was the only woman, the only black face, where her ideas were credited to male colleagues until she learned to send emails time-stamped minutes before meetings, where venture capitalists asked if she had the emotional stability for high-stakes decision-making, where her net worth became both shield and target. The Navy Reserve had been her escape, a place where competence was measured in precision and results. Her squadron mates called her professor at first, a mix of respect and condescension that shifted gradually as she outflew pilots with twice her hours. When she earned the call sign, Viper, It was for the way she struck targets with mathematical precision, leaving no margin for error. Now, banking her Super Hornet into a steep dive toward the compound, she could see the thermal signatures of Rodriguez's team through her targeting pod. 8 men, professionals who'd spent their lives earning respect through blood and brotherhood, were about to discover that their lives depended on someone they'd probably never accept as an equal on the ground. Viper 77 commencing attack run, she transmitted, her voice steady despite her heart rate spiking past 120. Time on target, 15 seconds. Rodriguez pressed himself against the compound's concrete wall, feeling the vibrations of approaching enemy vehicles through his boots. His team's ammunition was running low. Their extraction helicopter was still 3 minutes out, and their only hope was a pilot whose credentials he couldn't verify, and whose voice suggested she'd never faced anything more dangerous than a corporate boardroom. "All Razor elements take cover," he barked into his mic. "Danger close incoming." The FA-18F Super Hornet materialized from the darkness like mechanized thunder, its twin engines screaming as Amara pulled 4GS in her attack dive. She could see the compound laid out below her like a tactical diagram, enemy positions marked by muzzle flashes and heat signatures. Her targeting computer painted solutions across her heads-up display, but she ignored them. This required human judgment, the kind that came from understanding exactly where Rodriguez's team was positioned and how much explosive force the concrete walls could absorb. Her finger found the trigger. "Guns, guns, guns," she called out, sending a stream of 20mm rounds into the eastern courtyard. The depleted uranium shells chewed through enemy positions with surgical precision, each burst calculated to eliminate threats without compromising the building's structural integrity where the SEALs had taken cover. Rodriguez watched through his night vision as enemy fighters were cut down with almost mechanical efficiency. Whoever this Viper pilot was, she understood close air support in ways that suggested real experience, not just training scenarios. "Viper 77, good hits," he radioed, shifting to secondary targets on the western approach. Amara banked hard left, her aircraft's weapon systems already acquiring new targets. Through her canopy, she could see the lights of Beirut in the distance, a reminder that this wasn't a training exercise. Real bullets were flying. Real men could die if she made a mistake. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than her ejection seat. "Razor 1 Actual, I have multiple vehicles approaching your position from the west. Recommend immediate displacement to your extraction point," she transmitted while setting up for another gun run. Her voice remained steady, but her hands were sweating inside her flight gloves. Corporate presentations had never prepared her for this kind of pressure. Rodriguez checked his watch. 2 minutes until extraction. His team was still pinned down, and now they had vehicle-mounted weapons approaching. "Viper 77, can you engage those vehicles?" The pause before her response was barely perceptible. "Affirm, switching to JDAMs. You'll have approximately 30 seconds of cover after impact. Use it." High above the compound, Amara lined up her bombing run with the precision of a surgeon. The Joint Direct Attack munitions hanging from her aircraft's pylons were designed to eliminate hardened targets, but in close proximity to friendly forces, they became instruments requiring absolute accuracy. 1 degree off target meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic friendly fire. She thought of her father, who'd never lived to see her first solo flight, and her mother, who still called every Sunday to pray for her safety. They'd sacrificed everything so she could reach this moment, this test of everything she'd learned and trained for. Rodriguez felt the ground shake as 2 500-pound bombs detonated simultaneously, the concussion wave rattling his teeth. When the dust cleared, the approaching vehicles were burning wreckage, and his team's path to the extraction point was clear. "Razor 1 Actual, you are clear to move," came Viper's voice, steady as granite. "Your ride home is 2 minutes out." For the first time in 12 years of special operations, Rodriguez found himself genuinely impressed by close air support. Viper 77, that was outstanding work. Thanks for keeping us breathing. The response carried a note of something he couldn't quite identify. Relief, satisfaction. Just doing my job, Razor One Actual, get your people home safe. As Rodriguez led his team toward the extraction zone, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just witnessed something significant. The pilot's competence was undeniable, but there was something else in her voice, something that suggested this mission meant more to her than just another training sortie or routine deployment. Above them, Amara circled at 15,000 feet, watching through her targeting pod as the SEALs reached their helicopter and lifted off safely. Only when the aircraft disappeared toward the Mediterranean did she allow herself to exhale fully. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up as the immediate danger passed. Viper 77, this is Control. Mission accomplished. Return to base, crackled through her headset. Control, Viper 77, returning to base. She banked toward the carrier, her Super Hornet cutting through the darkness like a prayer answered. In 6 hours, she'd be back in a boardroom discussing quarterly earnings and market projections. But right now, she was exactly where she belonged, in the sky, having just saved 8 lives with nothing but skill and determination. What Rodriguez and his team didn't know was that their extraction had been orchestrated by someone who understood command at levels they'd never imagined. Amara's corporate empire employed more people than most military units. Her decisions affected global markets, and her technological innovations had saved more military lives than any individual pilot's combat record. But respect, real respect, wasn't something that could be purchased or commanded. It had to be earned, one mission at a time. The carrier USS Gerald Ford appeared on the horizon as Amara began her approach, its lights forming a constellation of purpose against the dark Mediterranean. Flight operations continued around the clock, launching and recovering aircraft in a ballet of organized chaos that required split-second timing and absolute trust between pilots and crew. Ford Tower, Viper 77, requesting permission to land, she radioed, running through her pre-landing checklist with practiced efficiency. Viper 77, Ford Tower, you're cleared for approach straight in. Welcome home. The landing signal officer's voice carried genuine warmth, and Amara realized that word of her mission had probably already reached the ship. Military communications moved faster than light when it came to successful operations, especially ones that saved lives. Her Super Hornet touched down on the carrier deck with barely a bounce, the arresting wire grabbing her aircraft and bringing it to a controlled stop in less than 300 feet. As she taxied toward the parking area, ground crew members were already signaling her into position with practiced hand movements that looked like choreography. Shutting down her engines, Amara felt the familiar mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration that followed every flight. But this was different. This hadn't been a training exercise or a routine patrol. She just directed close air support for Special Operations Forces in active combat, and everyone had gone home alive. As she climbed down from her aircraft, Chief Petty Officer Williams, the squadron's senior maintenance chief, approached with her post-flight clipboard. "How'd she handle, ma'am?" he asked, referring to the aircraft. "Like a dream, Chief. Your people keep these birds running perfectly." Amara pulled off her helmet, her hair escaping in dark curls that had been compressed for the past 4 hours. "Any word on the ground team's status?" Williams nodded. "All personnel recovered safely, ma'am. Clean extraction, no casualties." He paused, studying her face. "Word is you kept some SEALs from having a very bad day." The acknowledgement felt different from the usual post-flight debriefing. There was recognition in his eyes, the kind that military professionals reserved for proven competence under pressure. It wasn't about her bank account or her corporate title. It was about performance when lives were on the line. Just doing what any pilot would do, Chief, she replied, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Not every pilot would have volunteered for close air support duty while technically on reserve status. Not every billionaire would trade a climate-controlled boardroom for a cockpit where split-second decisions determined who lived and who died. Walking toward the ship's island structure for debriefing, Amara passed other pilots and crew members. Some nodded respectfully, others offered brief congratulations, and a few just stared with curiosity. She'd become accustomed to being an anomaly wherever she went, too wealthy for the military, too military for corporate circles, too successful for some people's comfort, too different for easy categorization. But tonight, walking across the deck of a nuclear aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, still wearing her flight suit and carrying her helmet, she felt something she'd rarely experienced: the simple satisfaction of belonging exactly where she was supposed to be. The intelligence briefing room was sparse and functional, its walls covered with maps and tactical displays that could be updated in real time as operations developed. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell, the mission commander, was waiting when Amara arrived, along with representatives from Naval Intelligence and Special Operations Command. Dr. Akaffer, Mitchell began, using her civilian title out of respect for her dual status, your performance tonight was exceptional. The SEAL team reported that your close air support was some of the most precise they've ever experienced. Amara took a seat at the briefing table, accepting a cup of coffee from an aide. Thank you, ma'am. The targeting was clean and the team's coordination was outstanding, made my job easier. What she didn't mention was the 3 months of additional training she'd completed on her own time, working with former combat pilots to refine her skills in close air support, or the countless hours spent studying engagement rules and friendly fire incidents, determined never to make a mistake that could cost lives. Mitchell pulled up a tactical display showing the compound and surrounding area. The intelligence gathered from this operation is significant. The target was a high-value individual in the weapons trafficking network, and his capture will likely disrupt several ongoing operations. Your air support made the difference between mission success and potential catastrophe. The words carried weight, but Amara found herself thinking about Rodriguez's team more than strategic implications. 8 men who'd trusted her voice in their headsets, who'd relied on her accuracy to keep them breathing. That trust felt more valuable than any intelligence coup or strategic victory. There's something else, Mitchell continued. Special Operations Command has requested that you be considered for additional assignments. Apparently, your unique combination of technical expertise and combat competence is exactly what they need for several upcoming operations. Amara set down her coffee cup, meeting Mitchell's gaze directly. Ma'am, I'm honored by the request, but I want to be clear about my motivations. I'm not doing this for the adrenaline or to prove anything to anyone. I do this because I can, because I should, and because good people deserve the best support available when their lives are on the line. It was the most honest thing she'd said in years, free from corporate speak or diplomatic language. In this room, surrounded by military professionals who understood the weight of life-and-death decisions, she could speak plainly about duty and purpose. Mitchell nodded slowly. That's exactly why they want you, Dr. Akaffer, because you understand what's really at stake. 3 weeks later, Amara was back in her corporate office in downtown Detroit, the 23rd floor of a building that bore her company's name in letters visible from the interstate. Floor to ceiling, windows offered a view of the Detroit River and the Canadian skyline beyond, but her attention was focused on the secure phone on her desk. Viper 77, this is Control, came the familiar voice. We have a situation developing. Are you available for consultation? She glanced at her calendar, noting the board meeting scheduled for 2 o'clock and the quarterly earnings call at 4. Her assistant had already prepared talking points about projected revenue growth and new defense contracts. In the corporate world, This counted as a successful day. Control, Viper 77, I'm available. What's the situation? We have a joint operation developing in the Pacific. Special operations forces require air support from someone with your particular skill set. The timeline is compressed, and frankly, you're the only pilot currently available who has both the clearance level and the demonstrated competence for this type of mission. Amara looked out her office window at the city where she'd grown up, where her parents had sacrificed everything to give her opportunities they'd never had. Success meant different things to different people. For her parents, it had meant seeing their daughter build something lasting. For her board of directors, it meant quarterly growth and market dominance. But sitting in that cockpit 3 weeks ago, directing fire support for men whose names she might never know, had felt more important than any corporate achievement. Control, Viper 77, send me the details. I'll make myself available. Her assistant knocked on the door, holding a tablet with meeting preparations. Dr. Akafer, the board members are arriving for the quarterly review. Amara stood, straightening her suit jacket. Tell them I need to reschedule. Something more important has come up. The assistant looked confused. In 5 years of working for Dr. Akafer, she'd never seen her prioritize anything over board meetings and earnings calls. Ma'am, should I tell them when you'll be available? I'm not sure yet. Could be a few days, could be longer. Amara was already reaching for her go-bag, the one she kept packed with flight suits and personal gear. If anyone asks, tell them I'm conducting field research for our military contracts division. It wasn't entirely untrue. Everything she learned in combat operations eventually found its way into her company's products: better communication systems, improved targeting software, more reliable encryption protocols. But that wasn't why she was going. She was going because Rodriguez and 7 other men were still out there, still taking orders from voices in their headsets, still trusting pilots they'd never met to keep them alive. And because somewhere in the Pacific, another team might need someone who understood that precision under pressure wasn't just a business skill. It was the difference between families getting their loved ones back or receiving folded flags. The C-2 Greyhound transport aircraft that ferried her to the USS Ronald Reagan was cramped and noisy, nothing like the corporate jets she usually used for business travel. But as they approached the carrier, watching the controlled chaos of flight operations from the small porthole window, Amara felt more at home than she had in any boardroom. The Reagan's air wing was conducting round-the-clock operations, supporting a joint task force that included Navy SEALs, Marine Force reconnaissance, and elements from Allied Special Operations units. The mission briefing, when it came, was more complex than anything she'd handled before. The target is a maritime facility in disputed waters, Commander Jackson explained, pointing to satellite imagery that showed a compound built on artificial islands connected by bridges. Intelligence suggests it's being used as a coordination center for hostile operations throughout the region. The problem is access. It's too heavily defended for a conventional assault and too isolated for a standard airstrike. Amara studied the imagery, her mind automatically calculating approach angles and weapon solutions. What's the recommended approach? Multi-phase operation. Special operations teams insert via underwater approach, neutralize specific targets, and extract with intelligence materials. Your role is overwatch and fire support, but the environmental factors are challenging. The commander pulled up weather data and tactical considerations. Heavy cloud cover, restricted visibility, friendly forces operating in very close proximity to targets. We need someone who can provide precise fire support in conditions where most pilots would have to abort. It was exactly the kind of mission that required split-second decision-making and absolute confidence in one's abilities. The kind of mission where hesitation could get people killed, but overconfidence could be equally fatal. When do we launch? Amara asked. Commander Jackson checked his watch. 1,800 hours. That gives you 4 hours to familiarize yourself with the specific aircraft configuration and coordinate with the ground teams. The next 4 hours passed in intensive preparation. Amara reviewed satellite imagery until she could navigate the target area from memory, studied weather patterns and wind calculations, and most importantly, established communication protocols with the teams she'd be supporting. This time, there were 3 separate units: Navy SEALs designated Razor 1 through Razor 3, a Marine reconnaissance team called Hunter 7, and a joint intelligence unit with the call sign Prophet 9. Coordinating fire support for multiple teams in the same target area was exponentially more complex than her previous mission. But complexity had never intimidated her. In corporate negotiations, she routinely managed discussions involving dozens of stakeholders with conflicting interests and billions of dollars at risk. This required the same kind of multidimensional thinking, just with higher stakes and faster timelines. As she climbed into her FA-18F Super Hornet, Amara ran through her pre-flight checklist with the same methodical precision she applied to everything else. But this time, she also said a quiet prayer, something she hadn't done since her father's funeral. "Viper 77, you are cleared for takeoff," came the tower's voice. Viper 77, rolling. Her aircraft accelerated down the carrier deck, catapult assistance pushing her from 0 to 150 miles per hour in less than 3 seconds. The familiar sensation of being pressed into her seat was followed by the moment of liberation as her aircraft left the deck and climbed into the darkening Pacific sky. Below her, the task force spread across hundreds of square miles of ocean, each ship playing its part in an operation that had taken weeks to plan and would be decided in the next few hours. Somewhere in that darkness, special operations teams were already approaching their targets, trusting her voice in their headsets to guide them through the most dangerous moments of their lives. "Control, Viper 77. On station and ready to provide support," she radioed, settling into a high orbit above the target area. "Viper 77, control. All ground teams are in position. Stand by for mission commencement." The compound below was invisible in the darkness, but Amara's targeting systems painted a detailed picture of structures, defensive positions, and patrol patterns. Her radar warning receiver was quiet for now, but that could change instantly if surface-to-air missile systems came online. "All Razor and Hunter elements, this is Viper 77. I have eyes on target area and am ready to provide fire support on your command. Weather is marginal but workable. How copy?" Rodriguez's familiar voice came through her headset. "Viper 77, Razor 1 actual. Good copy. We remember you from Syria. Glad to have you watching over us again." The recognition in his voice carried more weight than any corporate board's approval. These men remembered her not as Dr. Akafer the billionaire, but as Viper 77, the pilot who'd kept them alive when everything went wrong. In their world, reputation was earned through performance under pressure, and apparently she'd earned theirs. "Razor 1 actual, the feeling is mutual. Let's get you all home safe." What none of the ground teams knew was that Amara had spent the previous month studying their service records, understanding their capabilities and limitations, preparing herself to provide the best possible support. It wasn't something any pilot was required to do, but it was the kind of preparation that distinguished adequate performance from exceptional leadership. The mission began with methodical precision, each team moving to their assigned positions, while Amara maintained overwatch from above. Her targeting pod showed heat signatures moving through the compound like ghosts, professional soldiers conducting the kind of operation that required years of training and absolute trust in each other. Viper 77, Razor 2 is in position at the primary objective. Request confirmation of defensive positions on the eastern approach, came the call from the 2nd SEAL team. Amara adjusted her sensors, focusing on the area around Razor 2's position. Razor 2, Viper 77. I show two guard positions approximately 50 meters northeast of your location, and what appears to be a patrol moving toward your area from the south. Copy Viper 77. Can you engage those positions? The request was routine, but Amara paused. The defensive positions were close to a structure that intelligence had identified as potentially containing civilian personnel, workers, or prisoners, whose status was unclear. A mistake here could turn a successful operation into an international incident. Razor 2, negative on the engagement. Those positions are too close to potential non-combatant areas. Recommend alternate approach via the western route. There was a brief silence, then Rodriguez's voice. Viper 77, Razor 1 actual. Concur with your assessment. All Razor elements shift to alternate routes. The decision to refuse a fire support request was never easy, especially when it meant asking ground teams to take additional risks. But leadership sometimes meant making unpopular decisions based on broader considerations that individual units might not see. 15 minutes into the operation, everything changed. All stations, this is Prophet 9. We have been compromised. Repeat, we have been compromised. Heavy resistance at the intelligence facility. Prophet 9 was the joint intelligence team, responsible for securing documents and computer systems that could provide critical information about hostile operations throughout the region. Their compromise meant the entire operation's success was in jeopardy. Prophet 9, this is Viper 77. What's your status? Amara called, already maneuvering her aircraft for a potential fire support run. Viper 77, Prophet 9. We're pinned down in the central building, taking fire from multiple positions. We have the intelligence materials, but we can't move to extraction without support. Through her targeting pod, Amara could see muzzle flashes erupting around the central building like deadly fireworks. Prophet 9 was surrounded, with enemy forces moving to cut off any escape route. All Razor and Hunter elements, this is Viper 77. Prophet 9 is in trouble. What's your status for providing support? Rodriguez's response was immediate. Viper 77, Razor teams are committed to current objectives. We can't reach Prophet 9 without compromising our own missions. Hunter 7, the Marine Reconnaissance Team, reported similar constraints. Prophet 9 was effectively on their own, with only Amara's air support available to help them reach safety. The targeting solution was complex. Enemy positions surrounded the building where Prophet 9 was trapped, but they were interspersed with structures that could contain non-combatants. Any fire support would have to be precise enough to eliminate threats without causing collateral damage that could turn the operation into a strategic disaster. Prophet 9, Viper 77. I need you to mark your exact position and tell me where the heaviest resistance is coming from, she radioed while setting up for an attack run. Viper 77, Prophet 9. We're in the southeast corner of the central building, second floor. Heavy fire coming from the north and west approaches. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they overrun our position. 10 minutes. Amara checked her fuel status, weapons inventory, and calculated approach angles. She had enough ordnance for multiple attack runs, but the precision required meant she'd have to get much closer to the target than was normally advisable. Prophet 9, understand. I'm going to make multiple passes to clear your escape route. When I give the word, move fast toward the eastern extraction point. How copy? Viper 77, Prophet 9. Good copy, we'll be ready. Amara pushed her throttles forward, diving toward the target area at an angle that would bring her aircraft within range of any surface-to-air missiles that might be present. Her radar warning receiver remained silent, but that could change instantly. The first attack run was textbook precision. Her 20-millimeter cannon chewed through enemy positions on the northern approach to Prophet Nine's building, eliminating the immediate threat while avoiding any structures that might contain civilians. But as she pulled up from the attack, her radar warning receiver came alive. Missile launch! Missile launch! The automated warning system filled her cockpit with urgent alerts as surface-to-air missiles streaked toward her aircraft from multiple positions. This was the moment that separated good pilots from exceptional ones. Amara had trained for this scenario hundreds of times in simulators, but reality carried a weight that no training could fully replicate. Making a mistake meant not just her own death, but the failure of an operation that could affect regional stability and cost other lives. She deployed chaff and flares while pulling maximum Gs in an evasive maneuver that pushed her aircraft and her body to their limits. The missiles missed, but barely, and she could see more launch signatures appearing on her threat display. All stations, this is Viper 77. I have multiple SAM sites active. The area is now heavily defended, she transmitted while maneuvering for another attack run. Viper 77, Control. Recommend you abort and return to base. The threat level is too high for continued operations, came the response from the carrier. Amara looked down at the compound through her targeting pod. Prophet 9 was still trapped, still taking fire, and without her support, they had no chance of reaching safety. The intelligence they carried could prevent future attacks, save other lives, justify the risks that everyone was taking. Control, Viper 77, negative on the abort. Prophet 9 is still in contact and needs support. I can handle the surface-to-air threat. It was a decision that could end her career if she was wrong, could cost her life if she miscalculated, could turn her from hero to cautionary tale in military aviation history. But it was also the kind of decision that defined leadership, not the safe choice, but the right choice. Her second attack run eliminated the western approach positions, giving Prophet 9 a clear path toward their extraction point. But the surface-to-air missile sites were learning her patterns, adapting their tactics to counter her maneuvers. Prophet 9, Viper 77, your escape route is clear. Move now, move now. Through her targeting pod, she watched as thermal signatures emerged from the central building and began moving rapidly toward the extraction point. Prophet 9 was finally in motion, but they were still vulnerable until they reached safety. A third missile launch warning filled her cockpit, this time from a position she hadn't identified. The missile was better aimed, forcing her into an evasive maneuver that brought her dangerously close to the compound's defensive positions. But she'd accomplished her mission. Prophet 9 reached their extraction point safely, the intelligence materials secured, the operation successful despite the complications. Viper 77, Prophet 9, we're clear and extracted. Thanks for keeping us breathing. The acknowledgement was professional, but Amara could hear the relief in the team leader's voice. They'd completed their mission and would return home safely, largely because she'd been willing to take risks that other pilots might have avoided. As she climbed to a safe altitude and turned toward the carrier, Amara reflected on what had just happened. In corporate boardrooms, decisions were made based on risk analysis and projected outcomes, with months or years to evaluate results. In combat aviation, decisions were made in seconds, with immediate and irreversible consequences. Both required leadership, but only one tested whether your courage matched your competence. The debrief on the USS Ronald Reagan was more intense than anything Amara had experienced in her corporate career. Representatives from multiple intelligence agencies, special operations commands, and allied military units wanted to understand exactly how she'd managed to provide effective close air support in such challenging conditions. Dr. Akafer, began Admiral Chen, the task force commander, your performance tonight prevented what could have been a significant intelligence failure. Profit Nine's materials have already provided actionable intelligence that will likely prevent several planned attacks. The praise was gratifying, but Amara found herself thinking about the surface-to-air missiles that had come so close to ending her life. In corporate negotiations, the worst-case scenario was financial loss. In combat aviation, mistakes were measured in lives, including her own. "Admiral, I was just doing my job. The ground teams took the real risks." Admiral Chen studied her for a moment. "Dr. Akafor, may I ask why you do this? You have more wealth than most people could spend in several lifetimes. You could live comfortably without ever facing danger again. Why do you choose to fly combat missions?" It was the question she'd asked herself many times, usually late at night in hotel rooms between board meetings or during quiet moments in her corporate office. The easy answer was patriotism or duty, but the real answer was more complex. "Admiral, I grew up watching my parents sacrifice everything so I could have opportunities they never had. They worked multiple jobs, saved every penny, and never bought anything for themselves so I could have flight lessons and college tuition. When I achieved success, I realized that privileges come with responsibilities." She paused, thinking about her father tracing aircraft blueprints on their kitchen table, explaining the principles of flight to a 10-year-old girl who dreamed of touching the sky. "I have skills that can save lives. I have resources that can make a difference. When I'm in that cockpit, providing close air support to people who are risking everything to protect others, I'm honoring my parents' sacrifices by using everything they helped me become." The room was quiet for several seconds. Military professionals weren't accustomed to such personal reflections during operational debriefs, but something about her honesty demanded respect. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "Dr. Akafor, I'd like to make a formal request. Special Operations Command is developing a new joint task force for operations requiring both technical expertise and combat competence. We'd like you to consider accepting a leadership position." The offer was unprecedented. A civilian reservist being asked to command active-duty Special Operations Forces was almost unheard of, particularly someone who'd been flying combat missions for less than a year. "Admiral, I'm honored by the offer, but I want to understand what you're really asking. What kind of leadership position?" "Task Force Commander. You'd be responsible for coordinating air support for special operations units across multiple theaters of operation. The position would require you to take extended leave from your corporate responsibilities, and it would put you in situations where your decisions directly affect the lives of hundreds of military personnel." Amara thought about her company, her board of directors, her quarterly earnings calls, and all the corporate responsibilities that had defined her adult life. Then she thought about Rodriguez and his team, about profit.